document and preserve the stories, the history. I am Sharon Butterfly Ray, Thomas Ray. So actually the whole thing goes together because Thomas is my family name.
Where are we sitting?
We are sitting in the pavilion at Green Hill Cemetery, which is the city's cemetery. And in 1904, the city cemetery that was located at 6th and Fond du Lac, and the city paid for removals, and they paid the grave diggers, the people that exhumed them, so much per box. Fond du Lac is now Martin Luther King, but in 1904, it was still Fond du Lac at 6th before everything else was built there. That was the city cemetery, not to be preserved at all. And so they moved the people over to here. The first people buried here probably about 1890s. Unfortunately, there were a bunch of unknowns in that cemetery that did not get moved. So I guess the families of the people that were there, you know, escorted their people.
Touch on that briefly, and how in that time period there were kind of a lot of unknowns because, you know, life was very different.
Very, and I imagine even the whole burial process was probably different. Anyway, we tell it like, not quite a ghost story, but sort of a haunted history of Muskogee.
You know, this history is literally under their feet, and they just
don't know. And once you do not know the history, it's forgotten. And the next generation has no clue. So when you bring up something, they're like, what? That didn't happen. No, that couldn't have happened because I was told this, or I only heard that. And the truth needs to be documented. And that's why books and now film is very important.
Talk directly to families and talk about how, you know, to find out those truths. Although they may be.
Well, usually they say where there's smoke, there's fire. There's something close to it. I'll give you an example. I grew up in what I now know was a plantation. And we did not go upstairs. It was a two-story with a banister. As kids, sliding down the banister was the fun thing that we did. But the mystery was, why were we not using the upstairs of this big house? And there were sheets over everything. And so the stories that we were told, of course, they were to scare us not to go up there. So they talked about haunts and people returning from the dead. And there were lots of stories.
Good country folklore. Good country folklore.
And after you have heard the story so many times, your mind, because we remember things in pictures. And even though I never knew my great-grandmother, unbelievable. Everything from a rope around the neck to scratches on the top of the wood, which sort of is that thing about the bell and, you know, burial and wakes. And so I think a lot of that kind of thing were probably the predecessor to why we do certain things, why we have a wake, why we wait to make sure the person is dead. I wish that all of the oral stories that my grandparents said, I wish I'd been taping it, but now is my memory, and then as my memory fades, there it goes.